Action.
Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the book club. I'm Shelley Corney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us a couple of seconds and we will have some tea with Olga. Did you catch that?
Every button was pushed when you guys weren't watching. So since we got this up, let's go ahead and give us a like, a thumbs up, and share it with your social media contacts. Subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications whenever we go live or put out a new video. And when we schedule stuff, you'll get extra notices so you don't forget. Mm-hmm. It's really fun.
Yeah, it is fun to get those extra out of the blue notices on your email, your text, your phone. You'll hear from us in every possible way. Okay, what are we doing?
Drinking wine with Olga.
Okay, so yeah, so here we go. We're going to share with you some production insider stuff. So we just finished our Thursday the 16th live stream. The simple fact of the matter is that at the moment that you're seeing this, my best friend and I and my best friend's husband, who's my next best friend, are on vacation. Woohoo! For all of this week, as you've probably seen in the other videos. So we decided, since it's the same day for us, we're not opening another bottle of wine. We're still drinking the Champs de Provence Rosé, and it's still just as good. So, and we're still celebrating the fact that we have 1 million viewers. I'm sorry, 1 million views, and that we're
on vacation.
On vacation. Here's the vacations. All right, so there, of course, is not going to be any chat today because we can't figure out how to play a video and open it up for chat, even though we're not there. But one day, I'm sure, because YouTube thinks about it too, we'll have all of that. So I'm going to go back to full screen since this is going to be a really short program.
Okay.
Without the chat.
So we're in The Thrill of the Chase, Chapter 20, Tea with Olga, pages 114 through 117.
Ready?
I am.
Page 114, paragraph 1. Somewhere along the way, I learned that my cost could also show a profit. Olga Svoboda was a good example. She lived immediately behind our business in a space that was much too small even for one person. Her bathtub was just 36 inches long and looked crowded in her bathroom. When I offered to move her into a condo and pay for all her housing expenses forever if she would trade me her little casita, she just smiled. She knew I wanted to expand my gallery space and declined, of course. So we laughed and drank red tea.
This is a good example of how people get set in their ways and refuse to change or risk leaving their comfort zone. So make sure we don't do that as searchers, right?
Right.
Get stuck in something and never look anywhere else.
Yeah. Be prepared to alter your solve as required once you realize, rather than wandering around in the forests. Once you realize your solution wasn't quite as refined as you had expected, then alter it and then regroup. Head home and regroup.
Mm-hmm. Don't be like Olga.
Don't be like Olga Svoboda.
Although we don't always agree with it, we can understand people who are set in their ways. About red tea. Red tea is rather unusual. Red tea normally refers to, I don't know how to say that,
Rooibos.
From South Africa. Although it may also refer to hibiscus tea.
Well, there, what was that tea company? Celestial Seasonings used to have a tea called Red Zinger, and it was red in color, but it was a sleep-inducing tea, if I remember correctly. No? Red Zinger?
Super caffeinated.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Zinger.
I remember I tried it a couple of times, and yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Actually, that was my response. Like,
right.
Ooh.
You're thinking of sleepy time tea.
Yeah, I am. Not that I'm a big tea drinker, but
yeah,
I went through a phase.
Apparently, so did Fenn and Olga.
Yeah. Page 115, paragraph 2. Then one day she asked me to go to her. When I arrived, her attorney was present. That's never a good sign. The mood turned somber when she said she was dying of cancer and needed a favor. Her plan was for me to spread her ashes on top of Taos Mountain, and in exchange she would state in her will that I could have her little rooms at the appraised value. She loved the sacred old mountain with its strong ponderosa and aspen grove that blanketed its landscape so completely, which is not true. It's bald on top. They call it Taos Baldy. She said her father's ashes were there and she wanted to be with him again. The deal was soon struck, so we sipped black tea and nibbled on Oreos.
So both things were black.
Mm.
The tea and the Oreos.
Unless they were white cream Oreos.
They're black on the outside and white on the inside.
No, but you can actually buy white Oreos.
Probably not in the 70s.
Yeah, I guess not. No, that was a branding marketing ploy right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hydrox and all that.
Wow, this is a pretty good wine for being a week old.
So it seems that Forrest is surrounded by cancer stories. How many mountains does he describe in this book by telling of its landscape? In Chinese and the languages of neighboring countries, black tea is literally translated as red tea, a description of the color of the liquid. In contrast, the English term black tea refers to the color of the oxidized leaves. Just a little trivia there for you.
Yeah, black tea is not black. Not in the cup, I mean.
Right.
So now we have red tea and black tea.
They drank red tea, then they drank black tea.
Red and black. Page 116, paragraph 1. She had not seen the mountain from the air, so I asked her to fly the 90 miles with me and take one last look. She was fearful of flying and said she would never undertake such an, quote, outrageous adventure, unquote.
So this again contrasts Forrest's adventurous spirit with the meek Olga, who wouldn't leave her house or fly in a plane. No place for the meek, being in an airplane.
Or being in the air, or being at altitude. So there's some interesting options in there, aren't there? In there, aren't there? That wasn't correct. It didn't sound right when I said it, but it is actually a correct sentence. Page 116, paragraph 2. Such good-natured repartee continued as the light in her eyes slowly dimmed. Over the weeks and months, my little gifts of flowers and bubble gum brought temporary relief, but did little to belay the relentless feeling of sadness that permeated our visits. The tea-drinking rituals were always enjoyed. The tea-drinking rituals we always enjoyed had somehow become necessities. Although Olga's cancer was insidious and unforgiving by nature, it also allowed a time for her to reflect and prepare. That is a very refined paragraph. That's one of those like, dang, my brother, where did that come from?
Could be an anomaly, or just feeling poetic. Who knows? Does Forrest share this story to remember Olga, or to remember how he visited her often to bring her small gifts and drink tea with her? Does he attribute this good karma to helping him to survive his own bout with cancer? And I only came up with that because that's something that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Toby often talks about when he does good things for people, and I'll remark upon it, and he'll say, well, I need the karma from all the things I've done in my past. I need to build up my karma. So that's where it came from.
It works for me. Not that my past was not that bad. I don't want you to think that I was an evil person.
Well, he was at war. I mean, anybody who's been at war is going to feel like they need to make up for some things.
Page 116, paragraph 3. It was bright and sunny when my little plane lifted off and headed north, and I looked forward to performing the promised duty. The billowing clouds seemed to frame the task ahead, and with a small window open, I enjoyed the ever-present aromas of sage and juniper.
Forrest looked forward to keeping his promise to Olga, just as he looked forward to keeping his promise to hide the treasure, along with the aromas of sage and juniper.
So, if I remember correctly, Taos Mountain is on tribal land. Didn't we look on the map and had a problem?
I don't know
with
if
that?
the whole mountain is, but I know you're right that it's very much tribal land in that area.
I wonder if there's a warm waters Halton. I don't remember there being a New Mexico fish regulations warm waters, but every time I read this chapter like this, I don't read them until we're at it again, and then all these things start to pop out at me, and I wonder, why don't we have a solution for that area?
And what do you make tea with?
Pine needles?
Warm water.
Oh, so interesting.
And red tea is more oxidized than black tea.
Is that how it gets the color?
Yeah. And green tea is more fragile, so you don't steep it as hot or as long, unless it's a poorer quality of green tea. I learned a lot about tea.
Yeah. My first view of the great mountain brought a shock. The top was covered with snow that I should have known would remain most of the summer. It looked cold and foreboding as I circled, trying to decide what Olga really had wanted. She said, on top of Taos Mountain. That desire seemed unlikely under the circumstances and somewhat aloof from any sober voice of reason. The bitterness of cold remains long after the sweetness of a sentimental moment is forgotten. Surely her father was not way up on top.
That quote sounded familiar to me. The bitterness of cold remains long after the sweetness of a sentimental moment is forgotten. So I typed it into Google, and here's what came up. The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. A quote by Benjamin Franklin. I thought that was interesting because it seems like it would fit more for business, and he may have known it because of that, and then he just switched a few words to make it fit this particular instance. Also, your effort will be worth the cold. Stands out to me here with the cold from the snow, and he didn't want to put the ashes on top of the mountain because of the cold and the snow. It wasn't on top of the mountains that Forrest would scatter Olga's ashes. So your effort will be worth the cold. I guess it wasn't worth the snow.
Page 116, paragraph 5. I know Olga's spirit was pleased when her white bone fragments filtered through the small window and softly floated down to a place where the chamisa and mountain laurels were blooming and chipmunks scurried around all year. So this must have been below the snow line, right? When my plane and I turned south for home, he had going north. We went north, right? When my plane turned south.
What do you mean went north? Taos is north of Santa Fe.
Yeah. When my plane and I turned south for home, I felt a serene sense of warmth and satisfaction. Olga was at peace at last, and I suspected she may be having green tea with her father. Time had taken them apart, but it eventually brought them back together. But it being time? Mm-hmm. Time had taken them apart, but it, referring to time,
oh, I believe so, in that sentence structure,
eventually
yes.
brought them back together.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that makes sense.
Okay.
Forrest describes the flora and fauna of Taos Mountain extensively. Green tea is a type of tea that is made from Camellia sinensis leaves that have not undergone the same withering and an oxidation process used to make oolong teas and black teas. Green tea is more fragile, like I said.
Questions to ponder. Forrest ends the chapter with, quote, time had taken them apart, but it was eventually brought them...
But it eventually...
I'm sorry. Quote, time had taken them apart, but it eventually brought them back together. Could this refer to his father and himself as well, or to himself and the treasure? Does this chapter point too obviously to Taos Mountain? Well, yes, but it might be irrelevant if Taos Mountain is on the tribal lands. But so this reference to time lines up with some of the conversations that we have about the not far but too far to walk, because although time can be separating, right? It can keep things apart for some time. Eventually, it is time that brings you back together. So, in that confusing riddle of a sentence in the poem, "Not far, but too far to walk," we always assume that he's referring to a physical measurement of some kind, right?
Right.
Feet.
Land distance.
Right. Exactly. Yards. Two-dimensional distance. Could it be that it is somehow a reference to the fourth dimension, a dimension of time that has this interesting and unique capability to be too far and close all at the same time?
Time is relevant.
Time is relative.
Relevant and relative.
Plus, we have the rule of threes in this chapter, the Fenn rule of threes.
Oh.
Which is why my coin, I don't know whether I ever told you the story, my Fenn searcher coin, I didn't actually pick the numbers as some people did. I just said, send me a batch. I think we ordered 20 of them altogether.
Something like that.
And I didn't tell Mike exactly what numbers I wanted. And then our friend Michael Hool from Tokyo, realized that he had coin number coin number 369, and he had heard me talk about the Fenn 369 thing, and he offered it to me. He offered to trade it for one of my coins. He didn't particularly care, and that's my coin. I now have the Fenn medallion number 369. I thought that was very kind and thoughtful of him. But we have 3 T's in here. Headed north, Chamisa, Taos Mountain, cold and snow, meek. Might be one of the few places in the book the word meek is used.
Oh, no. I came up with the word meek. It wasn't in the book.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I decided that Olga was acting meekly.
Oh, meekly.
Because she didn't want to move and she didn't want to go up in the plane.
I see. Okay, you're right. I saw
Although
right
she
there.
was facing cancer, which is probably one of the most scary things you can do.
In comparison to flying a plane, yeah.
But then again, she didn't have a choice about that. When she did have a choice, she chose to be meek.
About it.
Yeah.
So, good chapter. Interesting chapter.
It
Lots
is.
there.
It's
Potential
there's a
for
lot.
aberrations.
There is. It's not an easy chapter. One can understand Fenn including it in the book because he does want to give tribute to this lady and remember her, because he does, of course, in My War for Me, talk about remembering people and having their names mentioned and all of that. So I think that's part of the reason he would include a story about Olga. But then we have to wonder, is there more than that?
So it's interesting to me because there are so many coincidences in here. The rule of threes, red, black, green, where you could go with that. The mention of the mountain, the mention of traveling north, the mention of time, I mean, there's a lot of interesting coincidences in this particular chapter. We'll have to go back and beat this up a little bit and see if there's the possibility of a house area solution. I didn't find one.
Well, you know, and the thing about Taos is we have been there. It's kind of deserty and kind of scrubby, and
we've actually never been to. So we go up effectively the Rio Grande Valley, and that is deserty, and that's why he finally said the Rio Grande is not in the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
It's effectively in the high desert and not in the mountains. It's high in altitude, but it's not in the mountains. The mountains are either side of that valley.
Yeah.
And although you and I have been on the western side of that a lot, the only time we've been east of that is our Cimarron solution. We went to Arroyo Hondo and the Rio Grande in the Taos box, but that's west, and we're still not in the mountains. We're in the Rio Grande Valley, which is why it didn't, seem fenny to us. But there are areas up in that mountain as you go up into the ski basin that get a little bit more coniferous in a sense. You
just have to start watching out for the tribal lands at that point, because there are a lot in that area.
You know that road that we take from Taos to towards Angel Fire, that one that crosses through the mountains? Those are the mountains he's describing here. And that gets pretty... Remember that one little road that went north off of 64, and we promised ourselves we were going to go back and explore it sometime? It was closed. The gate was closed because it was the winter. We went up in the winter time and it was closed. But you go up into that area and you're going to find the coniferous. I don't know if you're going to find water moving, consistently moving water as opposed to the occasional, rain generated stream. I'll take a look at that. Maybe there's something there for us.
Okay.
I got to figure out a warm water salt other than tea. Other than tea.
That's where warm water salt in the teapot.
Okay, so we don't actually have a closing slide. We just go straight to outro. How cool is that?
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Once again, we're on vacation, but we will be back next week live with chapter 21. So be looking for that. And for a Gypsy's Kiss the Book Club, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Thanks for joining us today. We apologize for not being live so that you could have the chat, but we'll be back next week. We thought we owed it to you at least to have a show so that you had something to see on a Thursday when we released it. And we hope this is a reasonable substitute for all the fun that we have in the live chat. Okay? So Shelley said for a Gypsy's Kiss, so I'm Toby Eunice for the same, a Gypsy's Kiss. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.